This episode of Snapshots of the Fool explores the Fool card from the Legacy of the Divine Tarot by Ciro Marchetti. A wonderful thing about this Fool card is that it's so beautiful, completely illogical and impossible. We see the Fool far above the planet, dressed in the costume of the dancer, an acrobat or a circus performer. Behind the Fool and clinging to a ribbon is a dog. Both of them lack any form of space-suitable protection, and clearly they're breathing. There's so much magic in this scene and almost nothing that makes literal sense. This is a card full of metaphors. As a rule, I don't look through an unfamiliar deck if I've chosen the Fool from that deck. It can influence my thinking and lose the mystery, but in this case there were so many logic gaps we had to flip through. The Fool turns up at different times throughout the major arcana cards, and this time taking a peek really did prove helpful in determining the identity of the Fool based on their costume, and with it, the keys to unlock their story. As I've said before, the intention of Snapshots of the Fool is a search for the Fool in the aesthetic, looking through the artist's perception into an interpretation that opens some windows and invites a Fool to come out. Art is the greatest gift for any imagination that yearns to fly. The Fool has dressed up for the journey, and in this case wears a circus acrobat's costume that shows off an exceptional talent. The Fool's grace, agility and physical strength are on display, and the costume tells us their intention is to dazzle, mystify and inspire us. Although the Fool's face is partially covered, we can see enough, despite the mask, to identify them in any lineup with other performers in their troupe. There's just something about them. We see the Fool balanced on an hourglass high above the planet. The world below is the circus ring at their feet. Unlike the other major arcana card performers who are filing out of the box in an ordered procession, the Fool has no assigned number and can enter the show from any point at any time, and, by defying logic, can appear in multiple disguises at the same time. The sand has begun trickling through the hourglass, and the Fool is poised and ready to make an entrance. It's not important which direction the sand is going, as the Fool is lightly resting on their tiptoes on the hourglass, and at any moment could flip it to set the sand flowing back the other way. They're deciding on their cue to enter the ring, and control over the hourglass shows we're on this Fool's time and not on our own schedule. This time the Fool is an aerial acrobat, ready to tumble from the heights, secured by nothing but skill and a ribbon, and never once touching the ground. Self-absorbed and confident, the star of the show is convinced the audience loves them and are waiting on the edge of their seats for a breathtaking entrance. Beautiful, purposeful, leading the way, all ego and the centre of everything, this Fool is about to fly. But there's a risk. Something's forgotten. An aerial acrobat doesn't tie the ribbon to themselves. They just grab and wrap it round, rolling themselves up and down, swinging from side to side, defying the laws of gravity and thrilling the crowds with their impossible style. But the other end must be secured. Without that, gravity wins. The companion dog has latched onto the ribbon, a warning of peril if the Fool leaps now, an impossible and desperate last-ditch effort by the loyal dog to anchor the Fool. This Fool, who is all arrogance, all ego, all wrapped up in their own perfection, has forgotten the importance of a small detail. The seemingly insignificant ribbon is all that separates the high flyer's spectacular performance from disaster, right in front of the audience. Splat! This card, via metaphor, shows us a fairly obvious Fool, so full of themselves and their own importance that the obvious is overlooked, and when the obvious is overlooked, a fall often follows. Let's step back from that imaginary horror and rewind the moment, just as the fool sweeps down into the floodlights with the ribbon draped across their arm. This time, we're the audience. The dog has secured the end out of sight, and the fool is the star we've been waiting for. We cheer as the fool glides outstretched and effortlessly, coiling up and down the ribbon with self-confidence and strength. We believe in this fool by everything we see. They wear a mask, but we're not fooled. We know this is the King of Wands. We'd recognise him anywhere. No other performer is quite so exciting, and he inspires us. This king has all the strength, energy, perfect timing, and flow that we aspire to, and we wish we could be as free as that if only there was time and we lost a few pounds. We see a human being like us who can overcome gravity, physics, limitations, and fear. We see an ideal. We would love, just like the fool, to choose which part to play on any occasion, dressed in the colours that suit our mood, deciding for ourselves if and when we want to make an entrance, to have the world at our feet, to be admired by others, a leader, successful, capable and confident, to be the King of Wands and nobody's fool. The risk in this scenario is ours. We're watching a fantasy and a story. This isn't reality. What we don't see as we're swept away in awe are all the costume makers and trainers and designers and families hidden from view who make the fool's moment on stage such a spectacle. The years of work, the tumbles, bruises and failures that the fool and his team endured to make us believe that perfection comes easy and anyone can fly if they've a mind to. This is not the King of Wands, that's the illusion. We're watching the masked fool. We're the fool when we mistake our perspective for truth, when we assume we can be someone by choice alone, and the fool's risk is ours when we conflate an impression with reality. Even more so when we beat ourselves up for failing to live the dream from our seat 5 rows back from the stage, sharing the popcorn. Just for a moment, let's tear our attention away from the stage and send our mind's eye across the crowd. Hundreds of people here at the circus who came to participate with their heads uplifted, their hands ready to clap, sometimes leaning towards the loved one next to them, eyes sparkling, their smiles lit up with concentration and delight. Notice how many of these strangers wear ribbons in all the colours of the rainbow, little twirled stripes of colour attached to their clothing that carry a message. These are metaphors of solidarity woven from a principle of caring, silently inspiring others to take notice and speak out for someone else's need. This is unique to humans in the animal kingdom. Our ability to consider the plight of a stranger we'll never meet and feel not only compassion for them, but an urge to take a risk and make a stand on their behalf. Purple ribbons are an international symbol for many issues. They raise awareness of cancer, animal abuse, religious intolerance, gender orientation, and the poor working conditions of assistant librarians. Purple is the colour of the crown chakra, through which we understand to move together in the same direction. The very best of human spirit is at work, and we're connected to each other because we care. The purple ribbon was the final key to unlocking the fool from the legacy of the divine tarot. Far beyond any physical limitations, science and logic, personal characteristics, sexual preferences, laws of nature and common sense, the purple ribbon binds everything together. Spirit to the fool to the dog to the risk to the audience to the star, and the King of Wands to the fool, through the crown chakra we all wear in the human costume that connects us with spirit. We're all one and the same, all connected, all fools, and without number. Thank you. And I could happily end it there. This fall has taken its toll in time and energy. So many rabbit holes explored. Tales of the fool as a clock, multiple flights of fancy, and a risk of the dog drifting out into space. But Dr. T found another fool hidden in the art, a metaphor if you like. So briefly, one last story. Take another look at the dog. Notice how the dog's pose so eerily mimics the pose of the fool. Dr. T thinks this card is all about balance, and that the ribbon represents communication between aspects of the self. These aspects are different and distinct, but part of the whole. Think of it this way. The risk doesn't exist, unless it's a risk to someone, in our case the fool. And the fool is not a fool without the challenge of the precipice. In the fool and the dog we can see the aspects of nature and nurture, anima and animus, the masculine and the feminine, the human and the animal, the internal and the external, not as separate things, but as connected aspects of the whole. The ribbon between the fool and dog ties these aspects together as one. It represents the communication that flows unnoticed between those aspects. We see the fool poised above the hourglass. Something is about to begin, a new journey. The obvious conclusion is birth or rebirth, and to see the ribbon as a metaphorical umbilical cord. Perhaps, but let's just call this card the before. Something is about to occur that involves change. The fool is selecting a card, an archetype, perhaps to be born as, perhaps as some sort of life change. I don't think the specific point is relevant. What we see hidden in the art is the fool's folly, both a paradox and a significant risk that, unfortunately, is far too obvious in today's society. The paradox is the assumption that we can select who we are, what archetype we desire, without understanding that the very fact we can attempt to choose means that decision has already been made. We are already an archetype. The risk is far greater. In attempting to choose a specific set of attributes, we create a dichotomy of those things we want and those we don't. We splinter the self into masculine or feminine. We choose logic over nature, or vice versa. And in doing so, we sever the connection. The ribbon is lost. The dog drifts away with all those things we decide are not us. Ultimately, this card is about unity and holism. The risk, if we don't hold the ribbon tight, is the loss of part of ourselves and the acceptance of illusions, of hierarchies and dichotomies as reality. And that wraps up the stories for this episode of Snapshots of the Fool. The show is over with a final bow from the card I drew from the ghost deck, the King of Wands, the spirit of the leader. We work better together when we're all moving in the same direction. Thank you.